This Anzac Day marks 50 years since the end of Australia's involvement in the Vietnam War. And I want to introduce you to one of the remarkable Australians who served in that war. At the age of just 22, Colleen Thurgar was listening to the news on the radio. Little did she know that that bulletin would change the course of her life. 4 Australian Army nurses were being deployed to Vietnam, and her name was one of those read out. Colleen and her team set up a hospital in 4 tin huts with no running water and minimal resources. Colleen rose to the rank of captain, continued as a nurse for many years upon her return. To share some of her story, Colleen Thurgar joins me now this Anzac Day. Colleen, thanks so much for your time.
You're welcome.
When you found out about your deployment all those years ago, you had to phone your parents to tell them. How was that?
Well, my dad said, my daughters don't go to war, but yeah, he was proud, very proud.
I'm sure he was. And you, ever since, have been a big part of the RSL, the first female state RSL president in history.
Yeah.
So that's been a big part of your life as well since those years.
Everything to do with veterans has been a big part of my life, yeah.
Well, Vietnam Veterans Association, I know that there was, obviously for many, it wasn't that easy returning initially, was there? And you wanted to change that.
Yes, we wanted to, especially for women, but it wasn't until the younger returned women came back and really started to have a go about the medals being worn on the right side and things like that, whereas we often were told to change our medals because they were on the wrong side. So there was a lot to change.
Some of our viewers, younger viewers, might not remember or might not know about it. I'm sure they might have studied it, but there was a welcome home parade many years after the end of the Vietnam War that was organised to finally give those veterans the credit and the praise and the thanks they deserved. And you were a big part of that. Can you tell our viewers how that all came about?
Well, one day we were all having a get-together with Peter Poulton. He'd just come back from Chicago after a welcome home parade in America. And we're sitting there having a drink, and we decided we'd have one. So we started it.
The Welcome Home Parade, it was held in 1987?
Yes.
And supported by Bob Hawke at the time, was it?
Yes. And it took us a little while to get support, but we started getting it from Veterans Affairs and what have you, but we mainly had to raise our own money, and then it got bigger and bigger with people flying in from all over Australia, people selling pigs in wheelbarrows to raise money to get here. So it was get to Sydney, that was the catalyst, yes.
Was it a big moment for many veterans, the fact that they finally got some Vietnam vets that finally got recognition?
Yes, it was. And on the morning of the parade, we honestly didn't know whether we'd be booed or cheered or what would happen. But it turned out that everybody was cheering and very kind to us, and the thousands of veterans that turned up was amazing.
The other thing that you were central to, and those that live in Canberra would know it, and I think visitors know the Anzac Parade up to the memorial.
Yes.
All the major wars are commemorated in our deployments,
yes.
And you fought for the Vietnam Veteran Memorial, which is a wonderful memorial
yes.
on that parade as well. Can you explain that battle?
Yes. Well, after, at the concert at the Welcome Home Parade, I suppose another beer or two, we decided that perhaps we'll build a memorial. So we went around with garbage bags to collect money to start off for the memorial.
And it's a wonderful memorial now for those that get down there and can see it. If you come to Canberra, we should tell our viewers to go and pay their respects.
Yes, and read what's written on the wall.
What's some of the message on the wall?
It's messages from different Vietnam radios like Vampire, Call One or Calls, and what is a goffer, and just the language of the time.
When you look at the way Anzac Day's evolved in in the days when the Vietnam vets were all the young ones, and
Yes.
and it was sort of the rats of Tobruk and
Yes.
and all the older, even some World War One
Yes.
vets. But how do you look back at the way that this has evolved from a Vietnam veterans perspective?
Well, I think it's wonderful that we've got so many young people, and how that they welcome the young veterans back too now, and having the veterans of all
And the spirit
marching,
of Anzac.
but the grandchildren and the children are proud and walking with their uncle's photo, or doing a little story about their great grandfather, and it's getting them involved.
Do you feel that historical mistake, that anomaly where the Vietnam vets weren't welcomed as they should have been, that's been corrected with some of these things, like the Welcome Home March, like the memorial?
Yes, we had to do it ourselves. So, and sometimes I still feel that, it hasn't been fixed, but it's all a bit late now. But at least what we went through, hopefully none of the newer veterans have to go through.
And you're, just on that, we should tell our audience this afternoon as well, you've got a significant initiative. You don't rest much. You've got one marking the 60 years since the arrival of the Australian Army training team in South Vietnam. That was in late 1962. And this year you've got a Vietnam Veterans
60.
Vigil.
Yes.
On the 3rd of August.
Yes.
What are you doing with that?
Well, that's when the AATTV first went to Vietnam, which makes it 60 years. We are trying, the Welcome Home Parade Committee and the War Memorial Committee, those of us that are left are trying to get that somebody visits every killed veteran's grave on August the 3rd to lay a poppy, lay a sprig of wattle, to say a little prayer, to say hello, even leave a beer if they want to, just so that there's somebody there with them.
Mm. So that's 11 a.m. On the 3rd of August?
Yes.
And so every veteran that was
They're
killed?
all over Australia. They're in about 224 cemeteries we have to cover.
Okay, 224. 3rd of August, 11 a.m, that's
Yes.
the day that you want to zero in on that, and whoever can.
Yeah, go and pay their respects to the veteran. And they can find the things on vvv.org.
VVE?
VVV.
VVV.org.
Yeah.
VVV.org. Well, we'll speak to you closer to that time, and thanks for joining us this Anzac Day. It's been great to meet you.
Thank you for having me.